No. Hi, Mohammed. How are you? I'm calling you on a cell phone.
How
Hi,
you doing?
Faisal.
Hey, how are you?
How are you?
Good, good.
Good. I don't know how well this is going to work because my internet is telling me that my connection is unstable.
Ah,
So I'm going to try now to connect us to the Facebook Live. Well, I'll wait for everybody else. So how are you?
I'm good. I'm good. Someone was telling me about doing a watch party. Are you familiar with a watch party? Because Facebook Live can't be shared, but watch parties can be. I
Mm,
learned that yesterday.
okay.
If let's see how we can create a watch party.
Okay.
Um, uh, watch.
Thank you.
Latest videos. No. Shows live. That's what's live on right now. Let's do this. How to create a watch party in Facebook.
Okay, Arlene is signing on also. Hi, Arlene. How are you? You're muted. Oh, okay. Okay, go on.
So,
I'm wonderful. How are you?
I'm good.
Good.
watch
How do
party.
you pronounce your name, Faisal? Mahmoud? Mahmoud?
You can just call me Faisal. More than that.
Are you Faisal?
Yes, that's good enough.
Okay, and you are one of the attorneys?
I am.
Okay, fantastic. And who has that beautiful dog back there?
Mine.
What kind of dog is it?
She's a Boston Terrier.
Okay, I love dogs.
Yes, I do too. But she seems well. She doesn't really bark that much. Only when the mail lady comes. So
or if it's time to get on Zoom, right?
yes, yes. Hi, Damon. How are
Hey,
you?
how are you?
Good.
I'm good.
My internet is telling me that it's unstable. So Faisal's looking up how do you do a watch party on Facebook.
Oh, okay.
So because I tried to do the Facebook Live, but it's constantly telling me that it's unstable.
Okay.
Really? Okay.
No idea why.
We'll see what Faisal can come up with.
Hold on 1 second. I'm gonna crack my window. It's a little warm.
Start. Screen share. No. Go. So I'm gonna try go live. Cancel. Nope, don't want to go live yet. I can go live now. Schedule a live video. Go schedule a live video. This user consistency can be reached when you go live. 1 minute at a time in the morning. Okay, backup screen. Okay, it creates a backup stream key. It's a streaming software. Stream. Oh, wow, there's so much I don't even know what the hell I'm doing right now. At the top of your newsfeed or timeline, click Create Post. Click then Watch Party. Search for a video or click a category to view additional videos. Click Add to Queue next to any videos you'd like to add to your watch party, then click Done. So, all right, so the way we would do it is I guess we would just do it, and then we would turn it into a watch party.
Okay. Okay. So what I'll do is I think this is recording. I have no idea, but I'll continue to record it and see what happens also. And then let me try to share the screen. So when I talked to Cecilia yesterday, she told me that she does the Facebook Live and then share the screen so it can put the information up. Okay. Okay, that's not what we want. Let me go back. Okay, let me go back to the information. Hold on. Okay, so let's see. I'm gonna stop the recording.
Settings.
Oh, it is? Okay. Ooh.
And Brenda, also, I wasn't able to open these slides up yesterday, so if you could send those to me again, I don't know if they could be saved at the bottom. That would be awesome.
Okay, all right. So I have to go into my settings. Oh God. So I have to go back into Zoom.
Yeah, you don't have to do that now, but
By the way, you are recording.
I am?
yes.
So the
So I guess we can get started.
thing that's flashing that says recording.
Yeah, it says it's still recording. I got an alert that says that. Or I can see that up in the top left hand.
Okay, and then the slide should be on the left also.
Yeah.
The share. Okay. All right, so I want to thank you guys for joining us today. I'm Brenda Rogers, and I've been a realtor for 29 years, and I'm a realtor with Reality Realtors. This event was created because some of my past clients called me asking about options that may be available to them due to the COVID-19 and their ability to possibly not be able to pay their mortgage payment. So everyone, would you like to introduce yourself? Faisal, would you like to introduce yourself?
Sure. Just want to clarify, are we live right now? And I mean, I know we're recording, but are we on Facebook Live?
No, we're not. We're not on Facebook Live. We're just recording it.
We're just going to record it and then post it later.
Yes.
Gotcha. Okay, just so that I'm on board, so then I can stop messing with that stuff. So, my name is Mahmoud Faisal Elkhatib. I'm an attorney with EV Haas LLC, Attorneys at Law. I've been doing essentially helping distressed borrowers for almost a little over 2 decades now. And we've been working, we've gone through almost 4 or 5 economic crises leading up to COVID-19. So even though this is unprecedented, as everybody keeps saying, we have seen some of the problems that people are facing and help people through it. So done loan modifications, short sales, foreclosure defense work. We've litigated against banks successfully. Yeah, so that's about it. And I've got a background in chemistry, believe it or not. I was originally a chemist and decided to get into this fun. So it's a little bit about me.
Okay, great. Okay, Arlene, would you like to introduce yourself?
No, that's a variety in terms of being a chemist. Arlene Price, I'm a mortgage originator, so I call myself a certified mortgage planner. I've been originating loans for over 22 years, that ages me. I am currently with a broker. I've been with this broker a few months now. I've been with the broker for more than a couple of years. Basically, my goal is to assist people in home buying process, refinancing, and educating them. I'm also on the board with Women's Council Realtors, West Suburban chapter. I had previously held position with the Dearborn Realtors Board and the Women's Council Realtors, and I've also held position with the Chicago Women's Council Realtors. So
Okay.
that's it for me.
Damon, would you like to introduce yourself?
Yes, ma'am. My name is Damon Ritenhouse. I'm an attorney at EV Haas LLC as well. I've been doing foreclosure defense stuff for about 9 years now. And like Faisal said, we put this firm together and got started right when the last crisis was really hitting heavy in Chicago. So I think what he and I are trying to do is use some of the lessons we've learned from that crisis and what we've been doing for the last several years with loan mod, short sales, foreclosure defense, and see how we can apply those lessons here and obviously be flexible and adaptable with the new challenges that are going to be coming for us. So we're trying to get as much information out to people as we can right now, and then kind of continue to see where things go as there's guidance at the federal level, the state level, and the local level as it relates to mortgages.
Mm-hmm. Okay, well, thank you. I was listening to the radio about a week ago, and they were talking about the crisis in 08 and the crisis now. And they said that the crisis in 08 hit about 8% of Americans. They're expected this crisis is going to hit 20%. And I'm thinking, oh my goodness, that's going to be a lot of people, because outside of Cook County, Kane County, which is the county that I live in, was the second highest county that was affected by homeowners in Illinois. So I'm glad you guys are here with me and we can get this information out to people to let them know what they can do to possibly save their home. So what is the first thing that a person can do when they can no longer afford their home that they live in?
So I'll jump in on that. I think the first step is communication, and just to make a distinction, there's going to be folks who are having a short-term hardship and it's unaffordable in the short term, and then there's going to be people who either know right now, or it becomes evident to them that they cannot keep the home in the long term. So we can talk about that distinction more as I move on. But to answer your question, Brenda, the first thing I recommend, especially right now, is to reach out to your loan servicer and let them know you're having a hardship. You have to open up those lines of communication. You have to let them know what's going on. You have to reference that you're being impacted by the pandemic in order to get the ball rolling and get the process started to get some assistance.
Okay. And one of the things that I've been hearing in the news is modification. Can someone tell us what modification is? That the homeowners can ask for a modification?
I can answer that. Modification is basically to modify or change or redesign the structure of the current mortgage. If they need to modify, maybe they need to, have their interest rate reduced for a certain period of time, or have the overage. Maybe they're behind on their payments. Have that put at the bottom or the back end of their loan, but basically just kind of restructure. Take a look at their current income, and then restructure their loan based on their current income and their current situation. So just change the terms and the interest rates on the loan for a period of time.
Okay. So then you mentioned that amount is put on at the end of the loan.
If they are behind, and then in some cases.
Okay, it froze up. Okay, can you guys hear me? Can you guys hear me?
Get a default from the borrower in order to get to the point where they can start doing an actual modification of the terms of the loan, but they can't just modify it without getting the default first. So they're manufacturing defaults essentially for people.
Yeah, and I think that's a good point to clarify for folks, is that the buzzword you're going to hear right now in the short term is forbearance of a loan as opposed to modification of a loan. Mm-hmm. So just to be clear, where people are at right now, I think that's a term they want to be familiar with and comfortable with and understand. And like Faisal said, a forbearance, especially in these circumstances, means by agreement, payments aren't made for a certain period of time. 3 months seems to be most common. You can apply for that. There's certain guidelines depending on the owner of your loan that I can talk about in more detail later in the presentation. But a modification, which is a restructuring of the terms like Arlene described, is not going to take place right now, I don't think. We've had some loans that were already in default that we were working through that were not related to COVID. Those are still moving forward towards modifications, which is a permanent restructuring of the terms. The modification for folks that are in trouble right now, I don't think is going to happen until later on down the line. So I think it's helpful to understand that distinction. And Faisal's point about there needing to be a default, I think, is well made. That's probably what we're going to see happening as time goes on and these forbearance periods expire. And again, that's going to be driven by the owner of your loan and some other different variables. But I think forbearance is the word that folks should be aware of right now, because that's what they're going to be hearing, and that's the relief they're going to be getting in the short term.
And to expect that. So because I know for me, like, for example, we decided I said, I'm going to take advantage of this forbearance, right? And so we went ahead and just attested to see so I do this. So I'll test things on myself because I know I can weather it, right? My wife hates it though. That's a whole nother conversation. She's like, I don't want to be your guinea pig. I'm like, you're not my guinea pig. I know what I'm doing. But the point is, by asking for the forbearance, automatically I'm anxious. My wife is anxious. We're worried about what are we going to do in 3 months, right? Mm-hmm. I can't afford one payment now, let alone 4 payments in 3 months. What do I do? So if my thing is, if you know that you're going into that, right, and then plan that on that 4th month you're going to be applying for a loan mod, okay? And I don't know what the look is going to be like in terms of the credit impact, because on my report on the form that I got, our servicer ShellPoint said, hey, we're not going to negatively report you against your credit bureaus. You're not going to get a hit. Oh, fantastic, right? So then maybe in the next 3 or 4 months I can refinance or do something, right? But on that fourth month, you have to be prepared to do something. That's the point, right? If you don't have all the money, which I'm sure very few people will, you gotta have, you call in Arlene saying, hey, Arlene, I need to do a refinance because I'm going to get hit with 4 payments because of COVID-19. Boom, you've already started the process within the first couple months to do that refinance to pay that overage or pay that off, right? Then the next piece is if you're going to do a loan mod, that's the big thing of all the documents, and I'm sure Arlene or Damon can talk about what are the documents needed in order to get a successful loan mod approved.
Now, I can answer that only to a certain degree, and that's because I had assisted someone in the past for loan mod. But as a loan officer, we don't necessarily work with the clients in terms of loan modification. We refer them to contact their customer service 1-800 number or the servicer. But I know that they need to take a look at their pay stubs, tax returns, pretty much the same thing that I would need if they're doing a refinance.
So Arlene, that's a good question. If you don't mind, Brenda, I got a question for Arlene. If they do come to you and they've taken this 3-month forbearance, would they qualify for a refinance? Could they do?
Now that's another question that I can't answer at this time, because I know when I'm doing a refinance, we look at the 12-month history of their mortgage payment. And so if their previous company have given us 12-month history and we're showing 3 months behind, we only allow them to be behind 1 month. So I'm not sure how they're handling it now with this COVID, because we haven't had anyone to come to us at this point. But I know right now the guidelines have tightened up, have really tightened up. So I'm not really sure how we're going to handle that when that 4th month comes. But credit score is still very important to us right now.
Right.
And so that hits their credit report and we're showing behind, then we're going to have to wait till that period, that 12-month period, goes over. We'll go back into our regular guideline requirements.
Yeah, so I guess it's a good thing that the credit, it's not hitting the credit report for these 3 months, but then you still need that 12-month history, and it's going to show 3 months missing.
That's correct. And then after that 3 months, if they're not able to make that payment on the 4th payment, then who's to say that they're going to go back and then go ahead and put that on the credit report? We just don't know how that's going to be handled yet.
Exactly, that's the point, right? So if they, on that 4th month, they may be like, well, COVID-19 is over, it's no longer an issue, and then boom, now we're getting negative reporting on our payments, right?
Right. So we want to be careful on how we guide the clients, because if it does hit their credit report, then they'll come back and say, oh, well, you said it's okay to miss 3 months payment, and I did that, and so now it's negatively impacting me because now they put it on my credit report after the 4th month.
Right.
So yeah.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. And I've counseled some people who are on the fence right now about, can I keep paying? And as lawyers, we always have to equivocate, especially right now, because we don't know what's going to happen.
Mm-hmm.
I think most, if not all, of the things I've read said there isn't negative credit reporting happening right now. But I am not at all confident that won't start at the end of this 3-month period immediately. So I think that's a great point, Arlene. It's really important to talk about the pros and cons. There's some people who say, boy, I probably could keep paying. I don't know if I want to. And they need to weigh that carefully, because even if you can pay right now and it's a hardship, but it's not going to break you, you need to consider that, because there's so much of an unknown that could happen at the end of this 3-month period. Credit reporting is a great example, and that could throw a huge wrench into a refi plan. Or I'm glad you mentioned that about the payment history, because that's something I hadn't even thought of.
And neither have I.
If you don't have a negative credit issue, you're looking back at that and saying, boy, there's these 3 months of missed payment here. That's a problem as the guidelines stand right now, it sounds like. So I think that's a good insight. And that's why I think, it's not a one size fits all approach. Faisal and I talked about this, I think, during our last Zoom meeting. Folks need to really take stock of what they've got going on financially, short-term and long-term, manage the risk. I mean, I know that's challenging, especially right now, but there's so much unknown. I'm not comfortable telling people, yeah, at the end of those 3 months, they're for sure going to modify your loan, because I've heard things from loan servicers for years, and I just can't take them at face value. And I don't know if they know right now. They might say that today and mean it, and then by August or September, there's a whole new policy in place. So, I think we're trying to just keep up with the times as much as we can and understand that there's going to be a lot of variability here. The more folks can kind of think short-term and long-term, 6, 12 months out, that's helpful. And some of this is legal guidance and some of it is financial planning. I think to try to lay that in. And then, we're probably going to have these meetings regularly because there's going to be major changes. You know, if we're having this meeting in August, I have a feeling there's going to be a whole lot of different stuff we're talking about.
Absolutely.
Yep.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Yeah, I have to agree with you, Damon, because we get new guidelines daily, and it's almost too much to even keep up with.
It's a moving target in a lot of regards. So yeah, stuff I've told people even a couple weeks ago, I might modify or change or be more judicious. So I do put that disclaimer in, you know, whether we're doing a general meeting like this or I'm talking to someone specific, it's all subject to change. So I think folks generally understand that, but it's good for us as professionals to make sure that we're underlining that, because people will come back and say, Arlene told me or Damon told me. And, you know, I think we've all learned that lesson over the years. So I try to be really careful when I'm giving advice, especially under times or circumstances that we're in right now, because there's just an amazing amount of uncertainty.
Right.
I want to take a moment and say thank you to Brenda for putting this together. I really appreciate the fact that you invited me, Damon, and Arlene to really put this information together for people. So thank you for hosting this and sponsoring this and putting this out there. So people really need to know about this stuff.
Oh, you're welcome. You're welcome. And you're right. I that is the reason why I did it, because a lot of people don't know, and there's so much uncertainty. Because what I did when one of my client called me, I called my mortgage company, and what my mortgage company, like you said, sometimes I want to test myself, and my mortgage company informed me that they were working with people who were behind before the COVID, and then they were giving them the modification, and then putting the people who think that they may be affected by the COVID in a pipeline to start working with them later. But they were pretty much giving those individuals who were behind before COVID some of the same benefits, because at this time they don't want to start the foreclosure procedures because there's going to be too many houses.
Right.
So I did reach out to my mortgage company to find out that information as well. So I'm just glad that you guys were able to be a part of it. And I heard you guys when you did it for Dearborn Realtors. And I had called Arlene actually before that to do it with her. So I'm just, like I said, thankful that you guys were a part of this and we could do it. So we've talked about the modification, we've talked about the forbearance, and then, so can someone tell us, I think you asked Faisal, the documents that you need if you want to do a modification?
Do we have
a little information on that, but if someone
and I'm happy to speak to that. I just actually was working on one this morning, so it's really top of mind for me. So I'm happy to jump in on that if Faisal doesn't mind. But yeah, historically, and you know, we do have ones that are in progress right now. To your point, Brenda, you know, there's folks that were in default for various other reasons that, you know, we're working through the pipeline. You know, some of whom have had foreclosure cases pending for a while, some of whom, like maybe the client you talked to, got behind but hasn't been filed against yet. So there's some variability in the process. But generally speaking, most of these applications are wanting to see kind of a financial snapshot, you know, so that would be generally 2 months worth of bank statements, 2 months worth of pay stubs. We have a good amount, and I think you're going to see a lot of folks who are not W-2 employees that might be Uber drivers or gig workers, as they're known. You're generally putting together a kind of a basic profit and loss statement for them, and we work with folks to try to get that put together. A written hardship letter is an important part of it, and we use that sometimes to just, we don't have to tell pages and pages about the hardship, but right now I think the COVID stuff generally is going to suffice, but that might be a good place to help explain what your financial situation is or how you get paid, especially if you're not a traditional W-2 employee. Tax returns are a big one, and that's one today that a client had not filed for a couple years, and it was a big stumbling block for us. So I really had to work with her and her husband to say, we need to get this filed, because they wouldn't even look at our application until we had tax returns filed. So there's variability even there right now, because as you all know, the filing deadline has been extended for 2019. So again, it's going to be different depending on everybody's situation. But one thing I would tell people is make sure you've got the tax stuff up to date as much as you can. And don't let that be a stumbling block, because that's one issue that we run into frequently, especially if people have unique financial situations or they haven't filed for whatever reason. Sometimes that's okay, but it becomes a major issue for us here. So the more people can start trying to get their ducks in a row, so to speak, and get those financial documents put together, the better position they'll be when it comes time to be evaluated for that modification, most likely at the end of this forbearance period. You know, I think that's probably what's going to happen. My suspicion is these application processes are going to be pretty similar to what we've worked on in the past. My hope would be they're a little more streamlined and that they're not going to be as laborious and time consuming, but I'm not counting on that. So, I think that's one piece of advice I give folks is start getting your documents organized. If you've got tax issues, try to get on top of those. And really the main issue is just getting it filed. It's your taxes kind of are what they are, and those don't generally become a huge point of contention. But where we've had real problems before is people who just haven't filed, and that has hamstrung the review from going forward. So getting those things put together now is helpful. Again, my hope is that the loan companies, if they have specific requirements, will work with folks, but I have a feeling individuals are going to need to be really proactive and diligent about working with their loan company and getting the instructions. And right now, I don't know exactly what the applications are going to look like, but I think they're probably going to be similar to what we've seen in the past, as far as wanting that financial snapshot to make sure that you can afford the loan going forward, depending on what the new terms are going to be.
Right. Okay. All right. Thank you. And then one of the things that I tell people, because some of the documents that you need for a short sale is similar to what you need for a modification. I tell people to make sure that they keep their documents updated. So if the mortgage company might ask for, updated pay stubs in a month or two. And then one of the things also is I found that people have to constantly resend the same documents. So I tell them, don't get discouraged, because if your mortgage company asks you to send the same documents several times, the people that's working those files are working multiple files, and sometimes they misplace things or overlook it. So those are the two keys that I tell people, constantly stay in contact with your mortgage company, and don't get discouraged if you have to constantly send the same documents. Do you guys have any information on that?
We echo that, Brenda, and that's very common, I think, in the servicing industry for various reasons. But I would say, yeah, whether you're working with an attorney or an agent or you're doing it on your own, diligence is key. Documenting and having proof of sending, I think, is key. I can talk a little bit more about how that might set up for future litigation, because that's always kind of the mindset that I'm thinking in. But yeah, updating documents is really important, because what we'll see frequently is that things will go stale, so to speak. So you might have submitted bank statements, and then there's been a delay in processing your tax return or whatever it may be. And by the time they're ready to go, they need 2 new months of bank statements because so much time has elapsed. So I think people should be proactive there and just expect to have to sometimes send in things several times. And again, my other tip would be, beyond doing it, make sure you document that, because if, for example, you're sitting in my office 6 months from now and there's been a problem and they've closed your review improperly, or they haven't followed some kind of federal guideline that's in place, that kind of sets me up to help defend you and do the court piece, which we can, again, talk about in more detail today if that fits the scope of what we're doing. But I think good record keeping is critical to getting a good outcome here, whether it's directly negotiated with the lender, or if there ends up being some kind of litigation in the foreclosure courtroom, which is more, my purview. The cases I've had success with where servicers have made mistakes is where people have been really diligent in their record keeping, and they can show all the steps they took and all the hoops they jumped through, and that there was some disconnect on the loan servicer end. Whether it was made in good faith or not, it was in violation of federal regulations and protections that are in place for borrowers. So I like to always, when I'm giving advice, kind of set people up as if they might be in my office someday, and they have to hand over those notebooks, or they have to send me those emails or those fax transmissions. Then I have a nice chronology of what they've been through over a period of time.
Okay. All right. Thank you. Now, is there a time frame from when you start the procedure with your mortgager that they should contact you or have the give you an answer for either one?
So, yeah, under regular times, and to my knowledge, these timelines have not been adjusted yet. So, again, check back with me in a few weeks, and there may be some extensions. But when you submit a request for assistance, you should get a written notification that says we've received your request. And as my understanding of law is that can just be done orally over the phone. That doesn't even have to necessarily mean you've sent in a written application. That triggers an obligation from your loan servicer to say, Ms. Rogers, we've received your request for assistance, either telling you what they need or sending you, documents that they'd like you to fill out. And if you have submitted written documents, they're supposed to get back with you, I think, within 5 business days from that date and let you know either we've got a complete packet and we're going to review it, or we're missing A, B, or C documents. Please get that to us within a reasonable time frame. Usually it's 14 days.
Okay.
My experience has been those acknowledgments are pretty sporadic. You know, some companies are really on top of that. Some don't do it. Some send them to my office when it should go to the client or vice versa. So there are pretty strict guidelines. I have seen it's all across the board, you know, companies complying with that. And then when they have a full packet, they should get you a decision within 30 days or notify you that there's been some delay. It needs to go to underwriting. The investor has to approve. There should be some communication, not just leave folks in limbo. My experience has been, and you might have seen this too, that a lot of times folks are just kind of left in limbo, or it's incumbent on them to follow up for information about where it's at, and they can't often get a substantive update. You know, that's not our department, or, you know, that's with someone else. We're not sure what's going on. So that kind of follows along with tracking the dates and when things were submitted, because there are pretty specific regulations that govern this process that are not always followed by the loan companies. And my belief is that those timelines are probably going to get tested even more so with the volume of loss mitigation material that's coming in. And it wouldn't surprise me if those guidelines get relaxed at some point in the future. But to my knowledge right now, those response timelines are still in place. And those govern almost all loan servicers that I'm aware of.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Yep.
And then I read in you guys' information, dual tracking. Can you explain to us what that is?
Yeah, I can touch that one. The dual tracking essentially is when the loan modification company, the servicer, is talking to you about your loan mod. Submit this document, get me this. And so that whole process that Damon, Arlene, and Brenda have been talking about, you know, what's required, and, oh, I got to resend it, and I got to do it over again. So all that process has been a very long, it's a long process, right? So the problem is the borrower or whoever's working on the loan mod gets myopically focused on only the loan mod. So you're pushing to get the loan mod, submitting, calling, following up, doing all these things. And then when you're not paying attention, the bank files a foreclosure action. Or they file the foreclosure action and then use the loan mod to stop it. And while you're negotiating with the loan mod, they haven't stopped the foreclosure. They're still racing along on the process. So normally the foreclosure is about 10 to 12 months, right? While they're talking to you, you're spending 6 to 8 months talking about a loan mod. By the time you finally have to get an approval or a denial, when you get that denial, you're like, okay, well now the foreclosure is going, it's too late. They pretty much almost finished the foreclosure while they're talking to you about a loan mod. And when you get to that point, they're like, oh, sorry, we're going to deny you because we're almost at sale. Wait, what? Yeah, we're going to sheriff's sale, so we can't talk to you anymore about your loan modification because it's too close to the sale date. But I've been sending you documents for a year. Sorry, you should have been in court doing something, right? So the dual tracking is where the servicer and the mortgage lender will talk to you about loan mods or short sales or whatever it is that you're trying to mitigate the financial piece, the contract, right? But the legal side is barreling down at full steam, and they're not even stopping, right? So the very critical piece so there's some dangerous parts as well in the litigation side, but what we try to do and what we strongly urge you is if you're finding someone who's doing loan modifications for you, first of all, people can't get paid. You can't charge for a loan mod up front unless you're an attorney, okay?
Okay.
And if you are doing a loan mod through an attorney, you want to make sure the attorney isn't just a transactions real estate attorney who only does real estate transactions. You want a litigator who's going to litigate the case for you in court, okay? And by that, you really want someone who can balance both sides. And we're happy. I mean, we do it. We've got other people we know who do it. There's some really good lawyers. Like the Association of Foreclosure Defense Attorneys is an organization that's been around really pretty much formed right around the first crisis to bring all the good foreclosure attorneys together, because there are so many out there who really were just oh, we can make some money now, so let's charge for doing foreclosures, and they really weren't defending. And so why do I mention that you want to find the attorney who does both? Because as Damon mentioned earlier, when you're going through a loan mod, they're going to make mistakes, right?
Okay.
The servicer's going to make mistakes. You're going to send your tax returns 8 times, right?
Mhm.
That is a violation of some sort, right? They're supposed to say, once you send them the whole package, they have to, and Damon can speak more about the specific guidelines and the timelines, but once you send your full package, they have to respond within a certain period of time. What is that, Damon? 30 days or
30 days from when they have a full package. Yeah,
what is it? 30 days?
I believe so. Yeah.
I didn't hear you. No,
Make a decision. Yeah. Yep.
30 days. 30 days, not for a decision, just to say, yeah, we got everything, and we're looking at it.
Yeah, exactly.
Do that, that's a federal violation. So now you can bring a federal claim against them. But if you haven't, like for example, so that's where putting the loan package together, or the loan is important, right? Just like Arlene, when she puts the loan package together for her underwriters, it's got to be perfect, right? If there's anything off, forget it. The underwriter's like, I'm not closing this deal, and they got a little issues. It's the same way. So like when we send it, very simple. If it's a 50-page document that you're faxing, then make sure you put 1 of 50, 2 of 50, 3 of 50, 4 of 50 at the page with your social or with your information or their phone number, okay? So that way they can see, oh, I'm missing page 5, right? And so when Damon goes to court, he'll take that 50-page loan package that says 1, 2, 3, 4 of 50, and then the proof of delivery, right? The fax confirmation, and submit it to the judge. Go, Judge, I gave it to them on, July 1st, and they never responded, and it's now September 3rd.
Mhm.
Oh, that's a violation. Now that we've created that complaint, right, and that problem for the servicer and the bank, guess who stops and says, oh, wait, what did you say?
The bank.
The service.
Yeah.
The bank goes, oh, wait a minute, don't sue us. Wait a minute, what's the issue? Oh, wait a minute, we'll settle. Here's $10, $20, $30, $40,000. Here, oh, you want a loan mod? I'll give you a loan mod, right? So now, I'm not going to guarantee it. What I'm saying is, it's like a bully in the schoolyard,
Mhm.
right? They'll bully you until you hit them once in the nose, right? When you step up to them and hit them back, no matter how big they are and how small you are, they're so surprised that you caught them that they want to figure out how to get out from underneath it. And that's really has been a big crux of our defense strategy and offense strategy is how do we catch these banks making these mistakes and use it against them.
Okay.
So that's a very long answer to your what is dual tracking, but that's dual tracking, and that's how we stop them from dual tracking is by stopping the foreclosure, defending it, and then using all the mistakes they've made in this loan modification process.
Okay.
So in the last crisis, I know I'm talking too much, but in the last crisis, in 2008, there was a lot of the subprime mortgages, they did paperwork wrong, they messed things up, right? So we had a lot of defenses in how they underwrote and wrote those mortgages. Well, this is a totally different world now, right? They've cleaned up a lot of their acts, and Arlene can speak to that. They've been more detailed as to their paperwork and what they want to do. So they still made a lot of mistakes, but not like subprime mistakes or 2008 mistakes. Now, really a lot of, I judge, and this is just my opinion, I see that most of the violations that we're going to see are going to be in loan mods. How do they manage the loan modification process? How do they manage the short sale process? And how they deal with that is going to be how we can bring claims against them to help get the borrower what they want, right? There's no getting my house for free. That the Illinois Supreme Court has totally destroyed that defense. And then the Illinois legislature and all the politicians found a way who were paid off by the banks to eliminate any way of that happening, right? But what we can do is we can push back. And that's kind of where I think the defenses are going to be going forward is where the mistakes were in the loan mod, which is why documenting the whole process is critical. One of the things to be aware of that we saw a lot in the last crisis was banks would say, okay, you have to stop making your payments. So stop making your payments. And the borrower will go, okay, I'll stop making my payments. Well, he could have made his payments, or she could have made their payments, but the bank told him to stop.
Right.
Which is why we're not advocating to stop making your payments. That's a borrower has to make their own decision, and we'll reiterate what Damon said. Financially, does it make sense for you to keep paying your bills or keep paying your mortgage? I've always said my benchmark is if I have to pick between feeding my 4-year-old and feeding a fat bank, I'm picking my 4-year-old.
Okay.
That's just me. So, but everybody has to make their own decisions.
Right. Okay. All right. Good. Anyone else want to?
Brenda, I'll just chime in briefly. I concur with a lot of what Faisal said, and that's what we've seen. If I had one kind of overarching point I'd make is that folks should just be aware of potential court action. You know, that's something we saw a lot, and it was heartbreaking every time, is that people would say, well, I was working with the bank and I didn't know either that a case had been filed or that it had been moving forward. So getting a lawyer is key. Obviously, not everyone's going to be able to do that for various reasons. So my advice would be aware of what's going on in court. Do not assume that things are not moving forward there, because foreclosure cases don't move at lightning speed necessarily, but once they get past certain critical points, it's really hard, to go back. So that's what I tell folks, is just be really, really cautious, and please do not take anybody at their word who's telling you don't worry about court. Sometimes it's done without ill intent, but the loan servicers don't know, or they haven't communicated with the lawyer. There's well-meaning lawyers who go, my client told me this case was on hold. I just went ahead and got a judgment. That's what I thought I was supposed to do. That's an unfair piece of the system, and it's disheartening. But at minimum, I think folks need to be really aware that it's a two-front battle. And to be successful, I think you really have to at least monitor the courtroom side. Sometimes it works the way it should, but boy, we've seen a lot of cases over the years, and I think we're going to see a lot more, where folks got lulled into that sense of security of, hey, I'm working with the bank, I don't need to do anything else, or I've been told, oh, don't worry about court, we're just going to kick it out. And for various reasons that may not happen. So if you can get a qualified, competent attorney, I think that's always a good thing. Again, a lot of folks for various reasons are not going to be able to. You need to be your own advocate, and at minimum be at those court dates, letting the court know what's happening, bringing your proof of documentation. Do not leave things to chance, because the system can just chew people up, unfortunately. And if they come to Faisal and myself after too much time has gone by, we may not be able to help them. Even if we know that something was unfair in the law, after certain time periods pass, you're really just kind of out of luck, unfortunately. So I'd rather see people be proactive about that, even if they're not coming into my office. Be aware that there is a legal proceeding here, and please pay attention to it as you're also working on whatever option you're trying to do to get things resolved. You got to do both. If you put all your eggs in the court basket, you're probably not going to get where you want to go either. So you really have to pay attention, I think, to both those things. And that's what we try to do as a firm. And that's what I tell people generally, even if they're handling it on their own, make sure that you're cognizant of what's happening on both sides.
Okay. All right.
Yeah,
Good.
can I add something to that? I have to agree with Damon in reference to, because I always have my clients to get in touch with an attorney or reach out to an attorney, because it's a real complicated process to go through the foreclosure or the forbearance or any of that, because they're asking you for certain documentation, they're asking you for certain things in writing. And if you don't have it, it's just like refinancing, because like my job is to actually put together a picture to submit to the underwriting. If it's not done properly and you don't have the right skilled person to do that, it will definitely get lost, and you can lose your property, your monies, or whatever. So you definitely want to be with a qualified attorney to do this. So I have to agree with Damon on that. And myself, I've had several clients that reached out to me and said, how do I get this? What needs to happen? Whatever. And it's very detailed, and it's a lot that's involved. So being a loan officer, my job is to help people get into a mortgage, educate them, but at the same time, not to structure loan modification or foreclosure documents. I prefer to send them to someone who's licensed in that area and who knows the court system and knows what they're looking for. So yeah, I appreciate them saying that, absolutely.
And yes, thank you guys for that information. So anything else? Would anyone else like to add?
Damon, did you talk about don't represent yourself?
I generally advocate against that. Like I said, I'd like to have the caveat that I know not everybody is going to get a lawyer, and sometimes that's a personal decision. Sometimes it's a financial reality, I advise strongly against representing yourself. But if the alternative is that nobody is in court doing anything, please at least show up. You know, be an advocate for yourself if you have to be. You know, I would love for everybody to get lawyers. I'd love for everybody to come to our firm. That just isn't always a reality, you know, and a lot of folks are going to be unrepresented here for various reasons. So if you cannot get qualified counsel, at least be your own advocate. I think being there is better than nothing. Although, again, I do have a lot of strong thoughts on folks representing themselves substantively. That's kind of a backup plan, you know, and that ties in with, you know, documenting your things and making sure the court's aware of what's going on. But yeah, I think we've made the point that if you can get counsel, you definitely should. I think you're going to get a better outcome almost always.
Yeah, and I would strongly urge. I mean, I know financially may not be able to someone to afford to pay for a lawyer, but it is so dangerous not to have one, because they've rigged the court system not to help the borrower succeed, but to give the. I mean, you'll get time, but in the end, they're going to take the property, or they're going to roll over all of your defenses. Even the mortgage chance, they've got a mortgage help desk that used to have, and it's still there. But they make you file documents and file answers, essentially admitting to everything, right? So any defenses you had, you lost them. And then the other piece of just showing up to court, I know, Damon, you're right. Just if no one's going to be there, at least somebody be there. But just to give you an idea, and I know I'm going to try to avoid getting too technical here, but in order to file the foreclosure and actually get a judgment, they have to serve you with process, right? Like someone has to show up at your door and hand you a document in your hand that says you've been served, right? There's been so many, especially in the last crisis, it's probably going to be worse now, where they would just throw it, they called it sewer service. They would throw the papers in the garbage, or they would throw it on the front doorstep, or they would throw it in the sewer, literally throw it in the sewer grate, right, in front of your door. And so what happens is if they haven't served you, then they have no basis, they can't get jurisdiction, they can't move forward with a case. That's how it's supposed to be. Well, it happens so often that the Illinois legislature changed the law that says that if you showed up at any point in the case, you have a 60-day window from that time to do anything. And if you haven't done anything, you waive service.
Oh, wow.
Which is the only happens in foreclosure cases. Like no other case in any part of law. And just so you know, Cook County is the largest court system in the country. Okay. No other case, nothing, no other type of case, nothing is like this where they can just ignore service by you just showing up to court. So there are some. I have to really say, it's really important that you have. Even I hire. I don't. If I don't represent myself, I hire a lawyer to go for me to do things because I could be too emotionally tied to it, too close to it, whatever the case may be. And sometimes I just don't know. There are things I don't know. Just because I'm a lawyer doesn't mean I know everything about the law. So it's really important. If you have to do it by yourself because there's no other option, okay. But I would strongly urge that you take a lawyer with you.
Okay. All right.
Did we emphasize that enough?
Yes. And I agree with you. If someone can, they should take an attorney with them, because you're talking about the roof over your head, the roof over your family's head. You're talking about investments, your investment. So it's something that people should really make sure that they weigh whether or not it's important to them, or if they can, to do it. So I agree with you guys. Yeah.
And the process is overwhelming. It's overwhelming. It's a lot. It's scary.
Yep.
Well,
and here's a good indicator. If you can't afford a lawyer, you can't afford a loan mod.
Yeah. That's true.
Right? If you can't afford a lawyer, you can't afford a loan modification. So now you have to look at, which I think might be segueing into the next series of options, whatever, but then you look at options of how do you get out from this problem, right? Mm-hmm. Which could be a short sale, for example, right? Now you're doing a short sale, and your short sale attorney is going to be able to go in there, and if they're doing both litigation, they can stop the foreclosure while they're getting the short sale, and then on the short sale, you can get some money out of that too.
Right.
You can get paid relocation assistance and stuff. So.
And did anyone want to tell what a short sale is? Go into that?
I think you can do that, Brenda. You can
Okay.
tell us what a short sale is. Yeah.
Well, I heard them say it last week, a week and a half ago, and it was perfect. As a realtor, I tell individuals that a short sale is when what you paid for your house and what your house is currently worth is less than what you actually paid for it or what is owed to it. So even though you agree to put your house on the market, the bank still has the final say so, because they will send someone out, do a BPO, a broker price opinion, and base that on what homes in the area and the condition of your home, and decide whether or not they will allow you to do a short sale. So a short sale is basically the bank taking less than what is owed to them on their mortgage. And that's also a very emotional thing for people. And some people don't understand it. And you can get it with a release or without a release. And I think one of you guys last week talked about when you do a short sale that you should make sure that, or at least ask for the release. So if you want to talk about that a little bit, Faisal, I think it was you, Faisal.
Yeah, I can do that. The short sale realm was kind of more of my battleground.
Okay.
But what I would say, so you're right, Brenda. When what you owe on the house is more than what the house is worth.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't think that a lot of that is happening as much as it was in the old days, right? Because they were doing the 110% borrowing and everything else.
Mm-hmm.
So there's probably more equity in the marketplace depending on what happens with housing value. So if housing crashes, then right now now you're in more of a short sale territory.
Yeah.
But the short sale is when the value of the mortgage is when the amount that you owe on the mortgage is more than what the house is worth and what it will sell for.
Mm-hmm.
So the bank is essentially on a short sale agreeing to take less and releasing the remainder. Now there have been servicers historically and banks who've been like, oh no, you owe too much and we want you to pay, right? We want it to hurt, or they'll try to stick you with the remainder of what we call the deficiency. That's a horrible short sale. You should not agree to that. There's no reason to agree to that.
Okay.
What I would just apply and keep, battling it out, and that's where litigation defenses in the courtroom, right, will get the lender to go, oh, you know what? If I do that, you release this, we're done, and it becomes part of the settlement negotiation. Is you stop hitting them with their mistakes, and they stop beating you on the head with your inability to pay the mortgage. It's like does that make sense?
Yes.
So really, if you're getting a short sale and you end up having to pay money out of your pocket, then that wasn't, in my mind, my judgment is there probably was a better way to get that done. So if you have a deficiency, you should be raising red flags and asking questions and finding someone to help you.
Okay. All right, perfect. Anything else? Anybody else wants to add something?
I'm sorry, one thing I want to throw in there. If they're asking for a deficiency payment, it's because the way the short sale was submitted showed that you had a ton of assets.
Okay.
So I just thought, so if you've got, if you're sitting there with a $300,000 401k or some IRA or something like that, and I mean, there are requirements what you have to and what you don't have to disclose and things. But if you're sitting with that, or you've got $100,000 sitting in the bank that you're not touching, right? And they're going to be like, well, wait a minute, you're going to pay out of pocket. So how to present the short sale is as critical as the short sale to get the result that you want. So that's a big mistake I've seen people make, is when they submit the short sale, they'll be like, oh yeah, my client's got $100,000 in the bank. Well, wait, why? First of all, why are you telling the bank that? Why would they say, yeah, sure, we're going to waive $12,000 off the top of your mortgage? They're not going to do that. They want all those assets. And they also want people to empty their 401ks. The banks want you to empty your IRA, empty your 401k, empty your retirement savings. They want you to drain every penny that you've got to pay them. So if part of some of the asset protection moves that you want to work with a lawyer is how you position that so that way you don't have to do that.
Oh, wow. Okay. Now that's one thing I wasn't aware of. Okay. That's nice. That's nice to know.
Yep.
And
Anyone else?
one point I'll chime in on, Brenda, regarding tax implications of a short sale, and we'll put the caveat out there that I'm not a tax lawyer. I'm not giving tax advice right now. But when you do have a debt forgiven, in this case, let's say they agree to take $100,000 for a $150,000 loan, in a vacuum, the amount of that difference will be treated as income for tax purposes. Again, I will not get into the weeds on this. The one bit of good news that we got was that the exemption for folks who are doing that on a primary home, doing a short sale, has been revived so that they're not held liable for that as if it were income. So I think in the short term, that's going to cover folks on their primary residence. We had an issue there where for about 2 or 3 years that was not in place, and it was really a major problem for a lot of our clients, and we had to be thoughtful about how we counseled them, because sometimes we were solving a problem with the bank and then creating a bigger problem potentially
With the IRS.
So I don't want to get too much into details there, but that's one point that I'll make. And I think it's critical when you are considering a short sale to talk with your team, including your financial planner, accountant, CPA, et cetera, to make sure you clearly understand what the tax implications are, especially if it's not a primary residence, if it's an investment property or something like that. Even with the primary residence, I think we still need to be really sure that the things are done correctly, and that when you do get that 1099-C debt forgiveness form, that you're prepared for it and you know how to handle it so that it doesn't create a big problem with the IRS. So that's something we've learned through experience. And again, anytime tax conversations come up, I always put that caveat. I'm not a tax lawyer and I'm not giving tax advice, but I do have to counsel folks that there are tax implications. And that's one big variable with the short sale that needs to be contemplated as part of an overall solution, because that's the last thing you want is to have someone do a short sale and then call you 6 months from now when they got a giant tax bill from the IRS, and that has never been mentioned to them before. So I think that's incumbent on all the professionals involved in the transaction to make sure people understand that piece as well.
Okay. All right. Great. That's good. That's good information. Now I do have one other question. So so in your guys' experience, how often do you see people get the relocation money? Does it depend on the mortgage company? Does it depend?
My experience, and I think it's governed largely by who owns your loan. So a lot of the stuff we talk about is really determined by, is this a federally backed loan? Does Fannie Mae or Freddie Mac own this loan? Is it an FHA loan? Is it a VA loan? So I can talk in more detail about some of that stuff if you guys want, but to answer your specific question, that is largely governed by who owns your loan and what programs they're participating in. So for example, if you've got an FHA backed loan, you're more likely to get a fixed amount. I think right now it's $3,000 is the guideline amount for relocation assistance.
Okay.
You might have a private investor that could give you $6,000, but they also might give you zero. So there's some variability there. So that's one thing we like to tell people. We'll push for relocation assistance, but a lot of that's going to be governed by the guidelines of the investor, and depending on what program or what insurance policy or whatever is governing that, there's some ability to negotiate, and there's some that just straight, this is in the handbook, it's $3,000. That's what the policy says. There's others that, as part of a larger litigation settlement, maybe we're getting more that way. So there is some variability, but relocation assistance is something we always try to get for folks, because that's just a deal sweetener, and it helps people make that transition. And usually it's a good deal for the lender because it's shortening their timeline, and it's getting those people transitioned out of the property in an orderly fashion. Almost always you're going to see as a stipulation, you must leave the property in good condition in order to be paid. You cannot trash the place. You cannot take the piping, with you. So that's something that protects the loan companies as well. And we counsel people that, hey, if you're going to do this, that means you need to leave the property in a certain baseline, condition, and you probably can't take all the fixtures out of there, et cetera. So I don't want to get too deep in the weeds on that either, but it is out there. It just varies depending on some of those factors that we've seen.
Okay, great. And then I know this is going to come up when people watch this. So Arlene, so if someone do a short sale, how long is it before they can buy another home?
So when they do a short sale, once the property is sold, it's 3 years after the property is actually sold, and not when it was recorded with the court, but when it's sold, 3 years after the sale date.
Okay, all right, thank you. And then my other question is, so if someone lives in a townhome or a condo and they have an association fee, what is the, what advice would you give them there?
Well, that's a big one. Damon, you want that one?
Yeah, I'll jump in on that. And my general answer is to folks, keep paying your association dues and your condo dues. And the reason I say that is because those entities have a lot of power and they can operate on a much shorter timeline to put you out of your property. For example, if you get behind with your mortgage company, and this is just under regular circumstances, the COVID timelines are going to be different, but you have to miss 4 payments before they can even file the foreclosure. And then the foreclosure is a more elongated process, and there's more steps to it. If you miss your assessment payments or your dues to your condo association, if they're acting diligently and they're really on top of it, they can file an eviction action against you, even though you own your home or you own your condo, and attempt to have you evicted until you've paid those dues. That's an extreme remedy, and it's fairly rare that people actually get dispossessed. But the problem is the association fees continue to rack up, the attorney's fees rack up. So that's a kind of a long-winded way of saying, if you can, stay current with those folks, because they can take action and they have powers over your property that maybe even the lender doesn't have, or they can use them in a way that's much more aggressive and can impact you a lot more in the short term than even your lender can. I didn't fully understand that until I was practicing law for a couple of years, and Faisal and I attended some association meetings, and I won't tell all those anecdotes, but we learned really quickly how much power a condo association or board has over homeowners. And I used to think mortgage lenders were the top players. That's not always necessarily the case. So it comes down to everybody's financial situation is different and needs to fit in with that overall plan. But it's really important to stay cognizant with your association and don't always rely on, well, I know the president pretty well. He or she might take it easy on me. They have a fiduciary duty to not let people get behind and not, skip their payments. So it helps to have a good relationship with the board. And sometimes there can be a little flexibility there, but unless you've got something in black and white that says you are allowed to miss payments or you can pay less, be really careful about that, because then people are sitting in my office 3 months later that are behind, a couple of months and now have $3,000 in attorney's fees that have been tacked onto that because they've hired counsel. I'm not exaggerating. I mean, sometimes the attorney's fees dwarf what is owed as far as association dues. And Faisal and I think, are in agreement on this. We've fought these cases for a while. You're kind of in a tough spot. I mean, it's hard to fight these associations. They've got a ton of power over you because of state law as well as their individual bylaws. So I know that's a long-winded answer, but it's why it's really important to stay current with those places. And even if you don't get an eviction filed against you, they can put a lien against the property that will encumber your ability to do a sale down the line. So they really have a ton of power, and I'm not sure folks always understand that, even when they've been living in condos for years.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would definitely do not miss that payment. Like if you have to pay something, pay that before your mortgage, right? Because the mortgage will take a year plus or whatever, and if you get a lawyer and loan mods, I mean, we've had foreclosures go for 7 to 9 years, right, where a borrower hasn't made a payment. But homeowner association, those guys move fast, and especially if it's a big building, there's very few and very little defenses available. I mean, the only defense that I've been able to use effectively is using their own documents against them. So reading the loan the declarations and saying that they didn't follow the decks or didn't follow something, or if they treated someone differently. So, but that's almost impossible to prove because you have to go get you have to get all of the records for all of the units for all the years from the association. They're not going to be very cooperative. Yeah, so just take the
You
payment.
generally don't want to be fighting with the associations. That's an absolute last resort. And if it gets there, sometimes you can work your way out of it, but it's almost always way more expensive than it should be because the fees just start racking up at a really high rate. That's what we've seen time and time again. So feed your family, do those things, but do not forget about the association. At minimum, if you have a hardship, at least try to get something worked out and get it put in writing. I don't even know for sure that I would trust that, but at least try to have that conversation. Don't just assume that they're going to take it easy on you because you're a nice guy or a nice gal. You know, people can really get in trouble with those associations, and we've seen that frequently. So I would say try to keep up with that, even if you're behind on the mortgage, because you have just more time and more options to get mortgage problems solved than you do issues with the association, in our experience.
And then what about property taxes during this time? Because most people, property taxes is included in their mortgage payment. And and also the homeowners insurance. What about those things if you can't make your mortgage payment?
That's actually a great question. Faisal, you may have some more thoughts on that than I do. I haven't seen a lot of clear guidance on what happens with those payments if you're in a forbearance, for example, and you do make those through a.
I'll tell you.
I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't even. It's funny how I see. There's always like 1,000 moving parts, and I forgot about that one, right?
Yeah, right.
Well, here is some, well, hopefully, because most of my clients are FHA clients, and we require that they have an escrow account set up. So we normally have enough money in escrow to at least cover it, because like we require you pay for the homeowner's insurance for the first year, and then we put about 6 to 8 months of, principal and, taxes and homeowner's insurance in the escrow account. So most of the time we're able to, get those taxes paid because we have that escrow account. So if it goes beyond that, then of course, the mortgage company, they put an insurance policy in place. So that's forced on there if we don't have enough money to do that. And so all of that's going to add up towards the amount that they're behind, that delinquent amount. So for the most part, the mortgage company try to pay that and keep that up so they can really take hold of the whole property.
Okay, all right.
And that's for the ones that are backed up by the government, the ones that are escrow.
Insight there, Arlene, and I guess it probably goes back to one of my major themes is it's going to depend on your loan and your loan servicing. So I think a lot of loans might be funded enough in the short term and there's enough escrow cushion to cover it for the short term and it's not an issue.
Right.
Other loans may not be, especially if you don't have an escrow account. So, for those folks, I think it's going to be back in that category of what can I afford to pay right now? And Arlene's point is extremely well made. If you do not pay your taxes, your insurance, whether or not you have an escrow, the bank will take steps to enforce its rights. In the instance of an insurance policy, it'll generally be through that forced place policy, which is frequently 2 or 3 times more expensive than what you had been paying. They will also advance tax payments. And again, this one it's really going to depend on what folks got going on because they may not be able to make a tax payment, meaning an individual borrower right now, and it might become a strategic decision out of necessity that the lender makes that, and then hopefully you get that worked into a modification where that can be capitalized on the back end of the loan. But there's a lot of unknown right now, and I think a lot of it is going to be governed by what the current state of your loan is and how well funded your escrow is and how long these hardships go on. If there's still issues a year or 2 from now, people may be able to afford, aspects of their loan, but their tax payment is just too burdensome. And if there's not relief there, they'd have no other choice but to have, the lender advance those on their behalf, and then hopefully try to work out something, where that can be spread over time. But it's going to be really, I think, determined by the individual loan companies and things of that nature. So that's something I had been thinking about, and I actually got a little more clarity even just in having this conversation. Unfortunately, the answer is going to be largely it depends, and I think that's one of the themes where we're at right now. And I think it's going to be something we really have to keep an eye on long term, because I have a feeling this isn't just all going to be resolved at the end of that 3-month forbearance period. There's going to be this is going to be extending probably for years, and unless there's meaningful tax relief, that's going to be problematic. We have clients right now who can't afford their home because of taxes. That was pre-COVID. That was a major issue that was on my radar for the last couple of years in Cook County. I'm sure you guys have seen that too. So I think if there's not relief, especially in these circumstances, that's just a ticking time bomb, so to speak, down the line. Taxes and insurance are going to make things unaffordable because we've got a number of people whose principal and interest is very reasonable, but their escrow payment is 2 or 3 or 4 times higher because the taxes are so high in their particular area. The loan's just unaffordable. And what the loan companies are telling me is, hey, there's really not a lot we can do about that. We're just telling you these are what the payments are, and this is what we need to fund your escrow, to make those payments. So I don't want to get on a tangent too much about taxes, but I think that's going to be something that's critical to keep an eye on as this progresses, because that's going to become a major sticking point, I think, in getting modifications done and in loans being affordable overall in a long-term sense.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, the like in the forbearance piece, because when you taxes are included in the payment, one of the big reasons why they need all 4 payments is because they need to refund the escrow. Because your escrow is based on, if your taxes, let's say, are $12,000 a year, right? Then they're going to collect $1,100 or $1,100 or $1,200 a month to cover the escrow and then some, right? So if you don't pay $3,000 or $4,000 of that, then you've lost the amortization of that escrow over the 12 months. So that's a big thing that becomes an issue. And the thing that we advise our clients is the bank is going to pay the taxes. So if you're in distress, the least of your concerns is the tax buyer. We do advise our clients that if they can, to pay their own insurance, because that creates a whole other violation. See, these servicers are designed to make money, and they only make a very small amount of money collecting your mortgage payment.
Yeah.
They make a lot of their profit when you default, right? Those late fees, those escrow reimbursement fees, the what do they call it? The separate account, or the
Property inspection fees are a big one. The suspense account, yeah.
The suspense account fees. All these are extra fees, and they make money on the forced place insurance. So their insurance cost is actually, if it's $1,200 on a single family house, their actual cost is $1,200, but they're going to resell it and charge you $4,000 or $5,000 for that forced place insurance. So these are all profit centers that they're doing to make money on the default. Yeah, I mean, there's another thing that we discovered recently in the last few months, in the last 6 months. We couldn't figure out why short sales were getting denied all of the time. Like, we hit a period in tail end of 18 and 19 where short sales were just getting denied. Like, everything is perfect, and so they would go to the sheriff's sale and they would buy it back, or the sale would be less than what the offer on the short sale was. So if the short sale was a $400,000 offer, they'd go to sale and they'd buy it for $300,000 at the sheriff's sale. So they were making less money. Well, we figured out what was going on. As a matter of fact, Damon, well, remind me to talk to you about that one deal, whatever. The servicer, right, denied the short. We must have made 7 or 8 applications for a short sale. Denied every single one of them. Okay. Found out that they actually took possession of the property. The bank took the property in the foreclosure sale, right? Never sold it to anybody, but rehabbed the property.
Oh, wow.
And then sold it on the open market for like a ton more money. And what we found out as we were dealing with other services, and by chance I was working a deal on the back end with some, long story short, it turns out the servicers created a construction arm of their company. So they now make money on the rehab of the short sale.
Wow.
So they don't want the bank to approve it. So they advise against, no, don't buy it, don't approve the short sale. So they're advising, because you're dealing with a servicer, not with the end bank, not with the original investor. So the original investor goes, what do we do? Don't approve it. We can do better. So what they do is they then do the construction rehab, make a ton of profit on that, and then they go sell it.
Wow. Wow.
Yeah. Breach of fiduciary duty, anyone?
Yes.
Wow.
Yeah. So. Well,
Interest, go figure.
is there anything else you guys would like to add? We've covered pretty much everything on the list. Is there something we didn't talk about you think people should know?
The only other thing, and it's kind of in line with what we talked about regarding attorneys, I'm very wary of scams that are going to be coming out and become prevalent, not just in the attorney space. I'm sure you all have read about, scams related to stimulus payments, et cetera. There's blood in the water. There's chum here. There's everybody and their brother is going to come out, whether it's lawyers, foreclosure rescue scams. There's probably stuff that hasn't even occurred to us that has gotten more sophisticated in the last 10 years. So I just want people to be really cognizant of that. And if things sound too good to be true, they almost certainly are. So, you know, I just, it's heartbreaking to think what's probably going to happen because people are so vulnerable and desperate right now. And I'm worried that a lot of people are just going to assume I can't get a lawyer, or I need to do this on my own, or, you know, I take, you know, this opportunity that's presented to me and it sounds great. And then it turns out that it's not. So I would tell people just to be really careful and thoughtful and not act out of desperation or panic, even though I know those are powerful emotions right now. Seek competent counsel, somebody that you trust, somebody that's not promising you too much, because you can't promise things under normal circumstances. You cannot for sure do it now. And the other thing I'll say is that most lawyers in this space are pretty flexible with their fees, and it might be more affordable than people think. So I know there's just kind of a general conception that lawyers are only for rich people, and we've tried to combat that over the last 8 or 9 years and meet people where they are. But yeah, I think there's going to be a ton of demand, and I think there's going to be a lot of people doing great work in this space. And I'm also concerned that there's going to be a lot of people who are doing things nefariously or just negligently, who are not competent to do it. So that we had a ton of those stories, you know, coming out of last crisis. I think it's probably going to be even more right now, just based on the numbers. And I want people to be really on guard about that stuff and vet information carefully and think carefully and reach out to the professionals in your life that you trust and make sure you're getting input from them. You know, talk to the person who helped you buy your home. You guys seem like you're great resources for people that you've had in the past. I do that for clients all the time. Or if friends say, you know, somebody's in trouble, I'd rather give them some information and help them make an informed decision than people are just out scouring the internet, you know, or getting called, you know, on their cell phone. Cause I think that stuff's going to explode with scams. So I'm really trying to put the word out on those. And as I identify specific ones, I'll talk in more detail, but just generally right now, kind of want people to be,
to pick up on what Damon was saying, there's, if it's an 800 number, right? Because if you're calling an 800 number, so it's a marketing thing, a marketing scam, let's make it a free call, right? It's not local, okay? It's not a local call.
Okay.
If they're out of state, you're done, right? Don't do that. Now they may hire people to like in Philippines to do something, whatever, but virtual assistants. But if the company you're dealing with, if the attorney you're dealing with, the person you're dealing with, who you went to originally is not in your state, they're not local, and they're out of state, they don't know local laws. So I know that was a big scam that we saw. People were like, well, I paid some guy $3,000 in California to do my loan mod. So scams, stay away from it. They do California stuff. Right. You just focus on people who are in Illinois. That's really what you want to do, is deal with the people who are local. So if it's out of state company or it's an 800 number, and I only say that because if, you know, I want an 800 number to make it a free call. Well, all calls are free now, right? I don't need an 800 number anymore. So if it's local, right? I don't mean local like it's got to be 312 and I'm in 312, but within your Chicagoland area, if you're in the Chicago area, within your Peoria, Bloomington area, whatever. But the idea is to stay within your local to help you out if you can, or at least stay within Illinois.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you. Arlene, would you like to? And then at the end, I want you guys to tell people how we can get a hold of you if for individuals that want to speak with you. You have anything you want to add, Arlene?
Yeah, basically just saying, because I know it's a scary process, and I know people have a lot of questions in reference to this forbearance, the COVID-19. Just feel free to, you know, contact us with any questions or concerns. And if we don't have the answers, then I'm an advocate of directing them to the person who has the answers. So I'm so glad that we're doing this video today, because of course, if someone needs to do a short sale, or they're in a home and they don't know what to do next, then I'll definitely have them refer them over to Brenda. And then if someone, you know, needs to get into a loan modification or having some issues with their mortgages or whatever, then I'll definitely refer them over to the attorney. So it's good to work with people like you all as a team. I feel confident that if someone does call me, then I have a reliable source that I can refer them over to, because we do get those phone calls as loan officers, you know, hey, I heard that we can put 3 months behind, and is that going to be okay? No, I'm not the one who's going to give you that type of advice. So I'm going to refer them to the person who can answer that. So yeah, they can reach me with any questions or concerns at 630-439-4497. And I am assisting with refinancing purchases, and the interest rate is still historically low. But yeah, my job is to educate and inform. That's Arlene at 630-439-4497. Thank you all.
Thank you. You guys want to give your information?
Yeah, I'm going to figure out how I can share my screen so I can,
I think we went dead. Oh, shoot. Toya.
lawoffice.com. So, and the phone number is there, 312-775-0980. That's the train telling me I'm talking too much. So, thanks again, Brenda. I really appreciate you throwing this and putting this together for us. And Arlene, it was a pleasure to see you again. I know we've come across you at the Dearborn functions and when you were on the board and stuff. So thank you.
Yes,
We'll connect soon.
absolutely.
You're on mute.
No, Brenda. Yeah, Brenda.
No, I was saying absolutely. Same here. Absolutely. So now you're on mute.
Yeah, I was gonna say. I think we lost Brenda. Brenda's ability to.
Brenda's on mute too now.
Sorry. No, I said thank you all. My internet went down again, so you probably heard me screaming my daughter's name, and then I put it on mute. But I wanted to thank you all, and we have to do something again in the future. I think this will be very beneficial, and I will send this out to you guys so you can use it on your platforms as well.
Great. Thanks a lot, Brenda. Stay in touch.
Awesome. Thank you all. Have a great day.
You too. Bye.